A child hears a branch snap in the dark forest. No one is there. But the child's brain doesn't conclude wind. It concludes someone is out there. Every time, automatically, without effort. Now imagine that same brain, that same hair-trigger, agency-detecting, pattern-completing machine running for 300,000 years in a species that desperately needed to survive. A species where being wrong about the lion behind the bush cost everything, and being wrong about the wind behind the bush cost nothing. Now imagine what that brain does with thunder, with drought, with the death of a child, with the return of spring. Humans didn't sit down one afternoon and decide to invent God. The brain did it for them, and it was doing it long before the first temple was ever built.
The conventional story goes something like this. Primitive humans, frightened and confused by a dangerous world, invented gods to explain what science couldn't yet explain. Religion was a placeholder, a coping mechanism, a cultural artifact that would dissolve once knowledge advanced far enough. Voltaire believed it, Freud believed it. Generations of rationalists built entire worldviews on that assumption. And it's not entirely wrong, but it misses something enormous. It assumes religion was a decision, a social technology invented by clever minds to manage fear. What the evidence actually shows is far stranger and far more humbling. Religion wasn't invented by humans. It was secreted by a brain that had no idea what it was producing. A brain that was solving an entirely different problem. But here's what actually happened.
In 1994, psychologist Justin Barrett at Oxford coined a phrase that changed how scientists think about belief. He called it the hyperactive agency detection device, HAD for short. The premise is elegant and brutal. Brains that assumed agency, that assumed the rustle was a predator, the shadow was a rival, the stillness was a trap, survived more often than brains that waited for confirmation. False positives were cheap. False negatives were fatal. So natural selection didn't build a careful, measured wait-and-see mind. It built a mind that sees intention everywhere, in weather, in illness, in luck. Barrett's research, developed further with Pascal Boyer at Washington University in the 2000s, found this tendency isn't learned. It's pre-installed. Infants as young as 6 months already prefer agents over objects. The universe was already full of someone before humans could walk.
Here's the scale of what we're talking about. Every known human culture, every single one discovered across 10,000 years of recorded history, on every continent, in every climate, has developed some form of religious belief. Not most, not the majority, all of them. Anthropologist Donald Brown at UC Santa Barbara spent decades cataloging universal human behaviors. Religion appears on his list alongside language, music, and the fear of death. This is not the footprint of a social invention that spread. This is the fingerprint of a cognitive structure that was already there. And the oldest physical evidence of religious behavior, ochre-stained burial sites at Qafzeh Cave in Israel, dated to roughly 100,000 years ago, predates agriculture, writing, organized cities, and every institution humans have ever built. The brain was doing this before civilization gave it anything to work with.
But the agency detection story only explains why humans see gods. It doesn't explain why they worship them. That required a second accident. Robin Dunbar at Oxford, the evolutionary psychologist best known for calculating the natural ceiling of human social groups, has spent years arguing that religious ritual exploits the brain's endorphin system. Specifically, synchronized movement, shared vocalization, rhythmic repetition. His 2017 work in the journal Religion, Brain, and Behavior found that communal ritual, chanting, dancing, singing, drumming, triggers endorphin release at a scale that ordinary social bonding cannot match. In a species that needed to cooperate in groups far larger than personal acquaintance could manage, this was not trivial.
Ritual wasn't the expression of belief. Ritual was the glue. The gods were the excuse to gather.
So here is the irony that keeps evolutionary psychologists up at night. The same species that built the Hubble Space Telescope, sequenced the human genome, and worked out the age of the universe to within a few million years, still defaults to agent-based thinking the moment something goes unexpectedly wrong. A run of bad luck becomes a sign. A near miss becomes a message. A recovery from illness becomes a miracle. This isn't weakness. This isn't ignorance. This is 300,000 years of selection pressure running exactly as designed, in an environment it was never built for. Antonio Damasio at USC has shown that humans literally cannot process certain kinds of uncertainty without narrative framing. The brain needs a story. And the most compelling story in human history is someone is in charge.
Consider what Göbekli Tepe actually means. In 1994, excavations in southeastern Turkey uncovered a ceremonial complex of carved stone pillars built approximately 11,600 years ago. No agriculture, no permanent settlements nearby, no cities, just ritual. Archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who spent 20 years excavating the site, made an argument that inverted the standard narrative entirely. He proposed that the need to build and maintain a shared ritual space may have driven the agricultural revolution, not followed it. Hunter-gatherer bands gathering for ceremony, requiring food surpluses to sustain them, beginning to cultivate crops to feed the ritual. Religion didn't emerge from civilization. Civilization may have emerged from religion, which means the agency-detecting, ritual-bonding, God-secreting brain didn't just produce belief. It may have produced everything else, too.
The modern chapter of this story is still being written. In 2023, a team at the University of Chicago, led by Ara Norenzayan, published an updated analysis building on his earlier Big Gods framework. The finding? Large-scale human cooperation, the kind required to build states, legal systems, and complex economies, tracks closely with the spread of moralizing gods, supernatural agents who watch, who judge. The cognitive accident that began with a child hearing a branch snap in the dark evolved over tens of thousands of years into a surveillance system for societies too large to police themselves by reputation alone. The God who sees everything is not a metaphor for ancient superstition. It is an evolutionary solution to the problem of strangers trusting strangers. It worked.
Return to the child in the forest. The branch snaps. The brain says, someone is there. That same brain, in a species that talked around fires and buried their dead and needed to coordinate hunts and harvests and alliances across hundreds of strangers, that brain began assigning the agency it detected to persistent, powerful, watchful beings. Not because it chose to, because it couldn't help it.